So this is my story of how I went from a broke college student when at my lowest point I had less than $1,000 to my name, was slowly building up more and more credit card and student loan debt, just trying anything, trying to make money from my crappy college dorm room, to now having a business that's on track to do over $50 million in annual recurring revenue, being able to buy pretty much every toy or materialistic item that I've ever wanted. And most importantly, being blessed with an incredible team and an incredible lifestyle that I now live. The reason I wanted to record this video and I wanted to record it in my car while I was literally just sitting here parked on the side of the road was because I think there's a lot of people that like to glamorize the world of entrepreneurship, and I'm no exception. I definitely like to kind of show the sexy stuff, the fun vacations, the cars, and whatever on social media. But I know when I was first getting started, there was a lot of stuff that didn't work, and there was a lot of times when, I was grinding, just working 16 hours a day from my college dorm room, wondering if it was all going to be worth it, wondering if I was making a big mistake, trying to do all of like these weird internet social media things to try and make money, wondering if I should just basically throw in the towel and do the thing that all the kids around me were doing, do the things that my friends, my family were telling me to do, which was basically just, Lucas, focus on school, attend your classes, and then you can get a good job when you graduate. So I wanted to make this video just for anyone who maybe feels like how I felt, that I had this lingering feeling in the back of my head and honestly in my heart, as corny as it sounds, that the traditional path was not for me. I had taken a look at what some of my friends who were older than me, who had gone through, school, college, went on to get, a 9-to-5 job. I had older relatives as well and people in my life that had gone through that. And there was just something inside my head and my heart that just said, this is not for me. I do not want this conventional cookie cutter life. I don't know if it's because I felt like I had more potential or honestly because I was just lazy. I was also the kid that never really did well in school. I had a hard time paying attention to one thing, staying focused, sitting still. And honestly, the idea of just working a career or a job for 40 years and then hoping you have enough money to retire, that terrified me. It did not seem like something that was going to fit well with me. And I was very lost for a very long time because nowadays there's a million 20-something gurus who can all claim to teach you how to make $1 million tomorrow with crypto or SMMA or Amazon or whatever the hot trend happens to be. But honestly, back then when I was first getting started, there weren't a lot of resources, and a lot of the things that I was having to do, I was figuring out on my own. I was literally just throwing a ton of stuff against the wall, seeing what sticks. So if this video can even be helpful to just one person who's maybe in a similar situation as I was, then it's all going to be worth it. In going through this journey in business and going through this process, I have found what I believe to kind of be the 3 stages of wealth, the 3 stages of getting rich, for lack of a better word. And every single person, unless you were born rich or you were born with a silver spoon in your hand, you're going to have to go through these 3 stages. Now, depending on what your goals are, you don't necessarily have to go through all 3. You might reach stage number 1 and say, okay, this is good enough. I think I'm happy with the wealth, the lifestyle, the work that I do, and I don't feel like, trying to get to the next level. Some people, perhaps like myself, I am naturally very competitive. I always want to see what's the next thing. I got very addicted to video games when I was in middle school and high school because I always just like trying to beat the next boss, the next level, the next fight, whatever it might happen to be. So these 3 stages of getting rich are just what I've personally experienced, what I've personally observed. A lot of friends of mine, a lot of mentors, a lot of peers and colleagues that have also gone through this exact same thing. It's not to say that you have to follow this exactly. The very first stage of getting rich, this is something that every single person has to go through, and this is the stage that I was stuck in for the longest time when I was a broke college student. This is what I like to call selling what you do. Essentially selling your skills or selling your time. The way that I got started in college was, like I said, I knew the traditional path wasn't for me. I wanted to find something where I just felt like I was working for myself. I wanted to do something where I felt like I had some sort of freedom and autonomy, that it wasn't just a boss telling me, hey, do this, and then you get a paycheck in a week or 2. And I actually found this online platform called Upwork, which you might have heard of. It's basically like an online freelancing platform. And that idea really appealed to me. Now it's very, very popular in what people call the gig economy, for people to have all these different freelance side hustles. But at the time, I had never heard of anyone doing any of these things. So I was really, really excited about discovering this platform. And when I signed up, there were all of these people that were posting these jobs basically for all of these different online business related tasks that they needed help with. And they would put like a price that was associated with the job. So someone might put up a job and say, hey, I need a photographer to take pictures of my new skincare product. And if you do it and you do it well, I'll pay you $50. And then there might be someone that says, hey, I need some new marketing emails written for my business. I will pay you $100 if you write these emails. And this, for whatever reason, the idea of just being able to work on my own schedule, even if it wasn't the most glamorous and sexy work, the idea of being able to work on my own schedule, do work that I was choosing to do myself, and most importantly, being able to do it remotely from anywhere in the world, theoretically anywhere I had a computer and an internet connection, that really excited me. So I started bidding on all of these random jobs, all of these random projects on Upwork. At the time I was 19 years old, I was a broke college student. I did not have any real skills. I do not consider myself to be a wizard with technology. I was honestly just, an average person who had a phone and a computer. And as luck would have it, one of the very first people that got back to me on the platform was a real estate agent who needed help with, like I said in that example, his marketing emails. So he said, it was one of the lowest priced jobs on the platform. He said, hey, I need 5 emails written that go to people that attend one of my open houses. Basically like 5 follow-up emails to send to people that have attended an open house, who have expressed interest in learning more about the property, or potentially, a property in the area. And he needs 5 emails written for that for $25. So $5 an email. And I remember I probably worked a good 3 or 4 hours on these emails. Like, I remember going to my school library, getting my laptop out, writing the first draft, being really unhappy with it, rewriting it, because I really just wanted the client to be happy. At this point, my mindset was not, I want to make $25 super badly. My mindset was, number one, I want to see that this is possible, that if I actually do this, I'm actually going to receive $25 into my bank account that I can actually spend. And then number two, I can begin to establish my profile on the Upwork website, that I can actually begin to establish a reputation. I can begin building up testimonials of clients that I've worked with that have been happy with me, and slowly start building, a body of work. So my dollar per hour, what I was kind of getting out of the work that I was doing at this stage was not super high output. But I worked on the emails for 4 hours. I sent it over to him. I expected him to, hate it or just ghost me or not even respond. But as luck would have it, he said, these look great. Thanks for your help. And then he, through the Upwork platform, he sent me $25 that within the next day or so, I got into my bank account. Not any significant amount of money, but to me, 19 years old, broke college student, this was absolutely mind-blowing. Because in my head, I thought, okay, if I can go anywhere, use my computer and get paid $25, then if I get better at this, if I keep doing this, and if I slowly start to kind of learn how this game works, theoretically that $25 could turn into $250 to $2,500, or maybe one day $25,000. And theoretically I could do it wherever. I can do it on my own schedule. I can do it wherever I want. I could do it from my bathroom, my couch, while I'm traveling, whatever. But I'll have freedom. I will have control. I will have autonomy, which, if you can't tell by now, maybe you see these aspects in yourself. That to me is worth so much more than money. The freedom, the control, the autonomy, and knowing that I am the one that decides what I want to do each day and each week. Maybe it's something in my brain that was switched, but that seemed so much more appealing to me. Making $25 working for 4 hours for myself seems so much more appealing than working for a boss who makes you clock in, clock out, but potentially is paying you 10 to 50 times more. It wasn't necessarily about the money in the beginning. So that was my very first client. And like I said, the most important thing that happened with that first step into the world of online business, online side hustles, was that it gave me a positive experience. That client, he paid me $25, but more importantly, he left a 5-star review on my Upwork profile saying, Lucas is great. I love the emails. You should definitely work with him. This very first client was this very small start of a snowball that I would continue to build for the next year, year and a half or so. I don't remember the exact details, but over those next coming months, I started to try and get higher level jobs and projects on Upwork, slowly working my way into the $100, $200, $500 range. And again, it's important to clarify, I did not have any real skills. That very first project was a writing job, a marketing writing job. I did not have any experience in marketing writing. I just did my best. ChatGPT didn't exist back then, but I literally just tried my best to write these emails that I thought would look good. Over the next couple months, I started to find other different projects, because again, the main people who post on Upwork are like online businesses who need help with potentially getting more clients, getting more sales for their business, and they want to hire out all these different things. So over those next few months, I started to do some graphic design positions. I started to learn how to use like Canva and Photoshop, just trying random different graphic design projects. I was never really good at those. I did a few other writing projects, writing things like blog articles or product descriptions or marketing emails. And I even tried to design a few websites. All of this was very, very important to me. And I think there's a lot of people who want to bypass this stage. There's a lot of people that want to bypass the experimentation, where this was by no means a super sexy, super glamorous part of my life. Most of my days, I was working like 12 to 14 hours a day, just doing random nonsense on my computer. And at max, I was probably making like $1,000 or $1,500 a month. And this was on top of being a full-time college student and also working a full-time job. There were many times where I would ask myself, why am I doing all this work for like peanuts? I'm making so much more at just my full-time job. I should just continue doing that, just logically. But there was something that kept pulling me back into it. A big part of it was the freedom. The other big thing was the snowball effect, because I saw how that very first client, the very first project that I worked on paid me $25. Now I was slowly building my income to $300, $500, $1,000 a month. I saw the path. I didn't know exactly how it was going to work out, but in my head I said, okay, again, if I keep doing this, if I keep getting better at this, if I build momentum, potentially this could eventually replace my full-time income. So again, it was not important about the money. It was about the potential, how it didn't feel like I was capped at a certain level of income, and the fact that I had freedom, I had control, autonomy, I could work on it on my own schedule. That was really exciting for me. This is by far where the most people who have any sort of entrepreneurial ambition, any desires of breaking out of the traditional path and living a life of freedom or control, this is by far where 80-90% of people quit. And the sad thing about that is that there's nothing really difficult about this stage. Like, I think most people watching this probably have the knowledge and the skills to teach themselves how to make a brochure in Photoshop or Canva. Is it your favorite thing to do in the world? Probably not. But if you're watching this and you have the mental capacity to click around on YouTube, you could probably figure out how to do a lot of the things that I was doing. It wasn't the sense that a lot of the things that I was doing were hard or they were really difficult skill sets to master. It was really just the patience. I think this is the reason this stage of getting rich is the hardest part. It's because most people want to get rich quick. Most people want themselves to work for 3 months, 6 months, and then they're driving the Ferrari or the Lamborghini and they have the amazing lifestyle. While there are some rare cases of that happening, you have to understand that that's not usually sustainable in the long term. The only reason why I feel comfortable sharing a lot of these business lessons is because I've been doing this now for close to 6 or 7 years. I feel like I've lived a lot of different lives inside of my journey in business, and I feel like I have the perspective to actually share a lot of genuine feelings and insights about these different situations that I was in. So the biggest problem that a lot of people have, they're not willing to go through that period of just monotony. You know, there was nothing exciting, there was nothing sexy, there was no big countdown that was going on in my head. For a good 3, 4, probably close to 6 months, I was literally just making $1,000 or less than $1,000 a month on top of going to school, working a 9-to-5 job, and basically working like 14, 16 hours a day. I didn't have a lot of contact with friends. I was not being the most healthy. I didn't have a crazy social life, go to any parties. This was my only focus. In retrospect, looking at everything that I've achieved now, if I'm being humble, I would go back and make that trade 100 times over. If I could relive my life every single time, I would say 6 months of just heads down, focused, hard work to potentially live the rest of your life like how 99% of people are never going to be able to do. Easiest, most logical decision that I would ever make. But I do remember when I was living through it, it was not that easy a decision to make. It was pretty much every single day, every single night that I was going through these things, I would have some sort of negative self-doubt, negative anxiety that would tell me this isn't worth it. You should just do the normal thing. This isn't fun. This isn't enjoyable. It's not going to be worth it. You should just quit. That was my emotions. From a logical perspective, I knew the things that I were doing were snowballing and were kind of giving me a diversity in skill sets and experimentation, everything that I was doing. But when you're living through it and you're stressed out, you have all these other things that are coming in, you have all these different priorities. And honestly, for me as a college student, the most important thing was I was looking around to all my friends. They were living fun lives. They were going on spring break. They were partying. They were actually enjoying themselves. I was like, why am I not doing that? So again, if you are someone that's going through that, has been through that, thinking of going through that, I want to tell you that is 100% the most normal feeling. Is by far the number one reason I truly believe most people never achieve any extraordinary or out of the ordinary levels of success, is simply because they lack the patience, or not even lacking the patience, but they aren't willing to make the logical trade-off. Because most people logically know the things that they have to do. Logically, we know we should eat healthy, we should go to the gym, we should be positive in our relationships, and we should ideally be leveling up our career, our skill sets, and getting something going for ourselves. Emotionally, though, that's not always how we live every single day of our lives. Emotionally, sometimes we're going to eat the chocolate candy instead of the healthy snack, instead of the fruit. We're going to eat the cheeseburger with double bacon instead of the salad. Or instead of working on our skill set, our side hustle, or reading a book, we're going to go watch TikTok or Instagram Reels for 3 hours. These are all very easy things to know what to do on paper, but actually doing them in practice is usually the hard thing. And honestly, I could go on at length about, how to actually get over that, how to find the motivation, how to find the discipline, how to actually train your brain into not making as emotional decisions and actually making the logical things that are going to serve you in the long term. That'll probably be an entirely different video. Let me know in the comments if you think that would be something that would be valuable for you, or if it would be interest to you. But this is by far the hardest part. Stage number one, that if you can get over this hump, that realistically for me and for most people that I've seen go through this, it's very rarely longer than 6 months, 8 months, at most a year. Which again, logically speaking, if you could trade 1 year of just disciplined hard work for 20, 30, 50 years of extravagant, over-the-top living, incredible lifestyle that most people would never be able to have, very easy logical decision. But for most people, they're not even able to make it 2 weeks out of a month through keeping themselves focused and disciplined on the actual goals that they have for themselves, much less for 6 months to a year. So that would probably be a very valuable video to record sometime in the future. The reason why I harp on that so much is because for the first 6 months, shit was really hard. For 6 months, I was basically making $1,000 a month, just doing a random mishmash of tasks and projects that didn't really have any rhyme or reason. Around the 6 month mark, I started to find my flow. And what I mean by flow is I found the skills, I found the projects, I found the things that I was good at, that people and businesses valued highly. Those were the things that I was getting paid for the most. And most importantly, it was actually things that I enjoyed doing. This combination, these three things, is the most important thing that you can find in this very first stage. Something that you're good at, something that's valuable to a person or a business, and something that you actually enjoy. The problem that I see a lot of people when they're watching these videos, when they're reading these books about self-development, they get very pigeonholed. It's either like you need to find your passion and you need to find the thing that makes you happiest, or it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum where it's like you need to just do the thing that makes the most money. Fuck all your feelings, fuck everything else. This is all that matters. In truth, I think a balance is going to be required for anything that's sustainable in the long term. Is the thing that you do for work always going to be, is the thing that you do for money or work always going to be your favorite thing in the world? Probably not. But if you're good at it and it's valuable, you're probably not going to mind doing it as much as something that maybe you're terrible at doing and you feel like an idiot when you're doing it. So in my opinion, finding that flow, finding that balance is by far the most valuable thing that you can do in this very first stage of getting rich. For me, that skill set was Facebook ads. Basically the skill set of, if you've ever been scrolling on Instagram or Facebook, you see that little sponsored text. I was good at, I enjoyed, and business or individuals would pay me a decent amount of money to create those little ads that you see on Facebook and Instagram. I couldn't tell you the exact reason why, but the only reason I was able to discover this was by doing all of this other experimentation, trying all of these other random projects about writing marketing emails, doing graphic design, designing websites, all of these things that seemed like nonsense at the time when I was doing them. But in retrospect, all of them were bringing me to this point to find the thing that was going to get my foot in the door. Facebook ads as a skill set is still valuable right now at the time of recording this video, but it's not the only thing that I do. It's not the reason why I was able to have a massive level of success. But the most important thing was it was my very first skill set that allowed me to get into that flow. And the reason was because I realized that instead of doing all of these random other projects, if I just focused in on those three combination of things, something that I was good at, something that was highly valued by people and businesses, and something that I actually enjoyed, if I only did that thing, I was going to make the most money, and I was probably going to spend the least amount of time doing it and have the least amount of stress, anxiety, and just the most personal enjoyment. And that's exactly what happened. When I started only doing Facebook and Instagram marketing, Facebook and Instagram advertising on Upwork, I slowly started to break past that $1,000 a month mark. My income actually started growing to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, and I was no longer working 16-hour days. I was actually able to bring that down, and more importantly, was able to get it to the point where I was actually able to quit my full-time job. Just because, again, the world is different now, but Facebook and Instagram advertising back then in like 2019-ish was a relatively new concept to a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses had never heard of it, had never used it. So I was able to help a lot of small businesses begin advertising for the first time on Instagram and Facebook and make pretty good money doing it, and actually had a lot of fun doing it. I actually really enjoyed helping a lot of small businesses start getting new clients and customers through social media. The reason why this is important at a high level is because obviously the world is always changing. Facebook and Instagram, some people might argue, are no longer the world's most popular social media platforms. Platforms like YouTube, platforms like TikTok, all of these social media platforms, those are the ones where, kind of eyeballs are flocking to. It's not necessarily important what is the skill set that you start with. What is important is that combination of those three things. And honestly, the most important, if you have no idea what are the things that you're good at, or you have no idea what is the thing that you're actually going to enjoy, most important thing is going to be what skill set is currently in demand by people and businesses. In 2019, when I was getting started, that skill set that was in demand happened to be Facebook and Instagram marketing, but the world is different now. Now, at the time of recording this, TikTok, is obviously massive. There's a lot of people and businesses that need help advertising and marketing on TikTok, as well as AI. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of talks that are mentioning these things, and obviously a lot of individuals, a lot of businesses are trying to capitalize on it. It's not necessarily important what is the exact skill set, but it's necessary that this is something that can work in your favor. Because again, I do not consider myself to be an above average person. I'm probably of average intelligence, average work ethic, if not below average. I consider myself to be a bit more lazy than the average person. So in order for things to tip in your favor, in order to tip the scales in your favor, you need to stack the deck. You need to have that combination of those three things. So when you're thinking about either your current skill set or a skill set that you could learn to get through this first stage, number one thing that you could think about, if you don't have any idea what is the skill set, what is it going to be, think about what are the things that are going to help businesses or people make more money, or save time. These are the things that people spend millions and billions of dollars on every single year. It's the reason why I was able to get started with Facebook and Instagram marketing, because not only does it help a business make more money, but it can also save them time. By having more customers come into their business, they can spend time on that, not any other nonsense that they might be dealing with. It's also the reason why I mentioned TikTok and AI, because those are two things that are currently kind of growing and exploding as trends that can either help a business make more money, or save time. I obviously can't talk at length about all of those things, but just using those three criteria as your measuring stick of figuring out, is this going to be worthwhile for me to at least experiment with? It's going to do a lot better than what I was doing, which was basically just throwing things against the wall and hoping something was going to stick. The last thing that I'll end off on in this section, and it was the way that I was actually able to go from making around like $4,000 to $5,000 a month as a college student, which was pretty respectable, but I was actually able to grow that to upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 a month without necessarily working any harder, without working any more hours, and still having the same skill set, was something that I read in some book that I forget the name of, but it was basically the water bottle pricing analogy. And it says that a water bottle, if you go to an airport, the water bottles are going to be like ridiculously overpriced. They might be like $7 for a water bottle. Versus if you go to Costco or you go to any major department store, you could get like a whole case. You could get like 10 or 20 water bottles for the same price of $7. Then if you go to the beach, maybe it's around like $3 to $4. And it basically explains that the same product, the same thing that's being sold, can massively change in price depending on its location, because obviously then the desire and the urgency around the product changes. A water bottle that's sold in an airport, you're selling it to people that can't get water anywhere else, and obviously if they're thirsty, they have to buy it from you. So then the price is going to increase. Versus at a department store where people are constantly bargain hunting and price shopping, then the prices are going to be a lot more competitive. The way that I learned this was in the book. It was, I can't remember the name of it. It was talking about how the exact same skills, the exact same knowledge that you have, that an employer or a boss or a client might value at a certain amount, let's say it's like $25 an hour. If you just take your exact same skill set, your exact same knowledge, and position it in a different place, in a different location, or essentially in front of a different client, a different boss, or a different employer, that exact same skill set that someone else might value at $25 an hour could be valued at $50, $100, even $200 an hour. And this was a massive learning lesson for me because, like I said, I was able to go from making around $5,000 a month helping small businesses with their Facebook and Instagram marketing to then making $20,000 a month with the exact same skill set simply by changing the types of businesses, the types of clients that I was working with. This would probably be something I could record another full-length video about. But when it comes down to your skill set, the most important thing that you need to understand is developing your skill set and getting better at the things that you do is one thing. But honestly, another massive way that you can make a massive jump in your earnings and a decrease in your working hours is simply going to be determining who needs this product or service the most, who is in the most desperate need of it, so that I can get paid the most value for it, if that makes sense. All right, so now in the backyard of my Airbnb right now here in California, just because the car was getting very sweaty, but that is the very first step in getting rich, is ultimately getting paid for your skills. So like I said, requires the most amount of patience. It's an easy thing to do logically in retrospect, but for most people, it's going to be the hardest part. I know it was for me. Every single day, I had doubt, I had anxiety, I had things that I thought weren't going to work out, but ultimately, I'm extremely thankful that I was able to get through it. And like I said, inside of that first step, the journey was essentially going from making my first $25 to then in the first couple months scaling up to around $1,000 a month. I got stuck there for 6 months, which is honestly where I felt like quitting the most. It's where most people want to quit. After that point, I slowly started to figure out what my flow was, what my skill set was. After that 6 months, I was able to get it pretty close to a full-time income, around $4,000 to $5,000 a month. And then around the first year, I was actually able to get that to $20,000 a month just by changing the types of businesses that I was working with. And that actually goes into the second step, which is getting paid for what you know. Instead of the things that you currently do or that you're trading your time for, this becomes a very, very important step as you begin increasing your income without necessarily increasing your working hours. This is the stage that a lot of high income earners get stuck in. I'm sure you maybe know someone who you know the stereotype of a lot of lawyers, a lot of doctors, anyone that's a high income earner, but the stereotype is that they're always working super, super hard. They're always working 18-hour days. They're constantly hustling. They're constantly stressed out, working nights, weekends, basically not without any free time to actually enjoy the hard work that they're actually going through. This is where this second stage comes into play. That again, like I mentioned at the beginning, if you are someone that has no interest in trying to gain some of your free time back, trying to gain some of that freedom and control back, you don't necessarily have to go to the second step. You can make a very good living just selling your skills, just selling what you do. But like myself, if you are someone that always wants to keep trying to get better, you always want to see what the next stage is, this is ultimately where you're going to be able to either maintain or increase your earning potential without having to work a full-time schedule. So like I said, in that very first stage, I went from working basically like 18-hour days to slowly decreasing that to like an 8-hour workday. And then I realized I didn't even have to work an 8-hour workday if I was able to successfully transition to the second stage. And inside the second stage, I've actually been able to get my working hours down to around an hour or two a day, just because that's what I enjoy. Theoretically, you could get it down to 15 minutes a day if that's something that you desire. So the way that I actually first discovered this concept, the way that I first discovered the idea of selling your knowledge instead of selling your skills, was when one of my clients, who was actually a dental marketing agency who I had worked with a few times, essentially it was a marketing agency that helped dentists get more clients. They essentially helped dentists like build their website, build their social media, things like that. And they would outsource a lot of their marketing work to me. So they would come to me and say, hey, we have this new dental client that wants to set up their Instagram ads, and they would have me do it. After doing it maybe like 2 or 3 times, and I would charge them maybe like a couple $1,000 every time I would set up an account, they approached me and they said, hey, Lucas, we really appreciate all of the work that you've done so far, but we were wondering if you could actually come in and train our staff, come in and teach our team how you're doing these setups, how you're doing these how you're doing this marketing, so that theoretically we would be able to handle it on our own. And honestly, the very first thought that I had was I felt a little threatened. I felt a little pressure because they were basically saying, hey, how can you train us to do this so that we don't need you anymore, so that we can theoretically fire you and not have to pay you anymore? But then the second thought came in my head, which was, honestly, I'm a little lazy. I don't love working with this client. I don't love doing dental Instagram ads every single day of my life. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I just taught them how to do it once and then never had to think about it again. Like I said, at the time I was doing these accounts for them. Every client that they would refer to me was maybe like $1,000, $2,000. So in my head, I wanted to say a really high price because I had never done this kind of work before. I wanted to say a very high price that I thought would scare them off, or at least make it really worth my time, which at the time, the highest price that I could think of was $6,000, which was the equivalent of like 3 to 6 clients that would have to be doing on their own. And immediately they're like, that sounds great. Let us know how we can get started. That was my very first eye-opening experience of realizing that if you have something of value, if you have a skill set, if you have a knowledge that you're currently trading your time for, if you're currently using that skill set and putting in the hours to help a business or help an individual see value with it, there probably is going to be a way that you could package that, or you could offer it to businesses or to individuals without requiring your direct involvement. Because that $6,000, it was a lot of money for me at the time, but the craziest thing was I got paid $6,000 to essentially do like 2 hours worth of Zoom calls. I did 2 one-hour calls with them. The very first one was just training their entire team, and then the second one was basically Q&A. And I realized, wow, it feels a lot better getting paid $3,000 an hour, and potentially making less money, at least for the time being, than it does getting paid $100, $50 an hour, but having to constantly slave and constantly hustle. So this is the reason why this is kind of the natural progression from the very first stage. The very first stage, you're kind of building your foundations, you're building your skill sets, you're figuring out what is actually going to be the thing that has those 3 qualities, the thing that actually you're good at, the thing that actually businesses and individuals value and they're willing to pay a decent price for, and honestly, most importantly, the third thing, what is the thing that you're actually going to enjoy? Once you find that thing, once you do it, you actually have the patience to build up that skill set. The next stage beyond that is how do you go from trading your time with that skill to instead getting paid for the value that you can provide? Because honestly, the highest value that I could provide to that client was not necessarily having them rely on me and always coming to me every time they needed to set up some Instagram ads for one of their clients. Instead, if I just trained their team once, they could continue running their business, they could help tons and tons of clients, and I could get paid a lot better for my time without necessarily having to be the one that's doing everything for them. So that was my very first eye-opening experience into this world of selling your knowledge. And because of this very first eye-opening experience, I realized if I could just package the things that I know, if I could just take the skill set that I had learned about helping small businesses, helping online businesses with their Instagram ads and Facebook ads, and basically systematize it, basically put it into a digital product that people could purchase at any time, I would no longer have to be the one that's constantly going in and doing all of these Facebook and Instagram ad account setups. I would no longer have to be the person that was constantly answering client questions and emails, and instead they could potentially just go watch a video recording, or they could go watch a Zoom that I'd done with a previous client that answered that question for them. So this was when I began to start looking into the world of online consulting, online coaching, and online courses. Now, before I even get any further, I already know that some people watching this video already immediately have a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to the world of online courses, online coaching, online consulting, because everyone has had that experience where you see some guy standing in front of like a fancy house, a fancy mansion, a fancy car, and then you find out you can buy his course to teach you how to be a millionaire for $1,000, $2,000, and then it ends up being a total scam. And that's completely understandable because honestly, I think the whole world of online courses, coaching, and consulting has a very bad reputation for good reason. The reason, in my opinion, is because there are so many people out there that can just claim to teach you how to do something just by showing you a flashy lifestyle. There's an endless supply of Instagram gurus, Instagram influencers, people that have all of the shiny accolades of a crazy lifestyle, but very rarely do they actually have the business acumen and the actual business insights to back it up. So that's usually why a lot of courses and a lot of coaching gets a bad rap, because it's usually taught or perpetuated by people that have no real business experience. But I know for me personally, some of the biggest growth periods in my life, some of the biggest growth periods in my skill set, in my personal take-home income, and honestly just in my lifestyle and my relationships have come from different courses, different coaching, and different training that I've invested in. So honestly, being able to vet the guru, being able to vet the coach or the trainer that you're thinking of learning from is going to become a very valuable skill set if you go down this path. Which honestly, again, that's another video that I could put together if it's something that you might have interest in. Let me know in the comments. And even at the time, I knew that there was negative stigma associated with selling your knowledge, selling online courses, selling coaching. But because I had that really amazing experience with that first client where I basically got paid $6,000 for 2 hours of work, and the client was over the moon happy. They were like, oh my God, thank you so much. This is gonna be game changing for our business. They followed up maybe a couple months later to ask some small questions via email, but for the most part, they were super, super happy. That gave me the light bulb moment in my head to think, okay, if I can do this with this one client, what's stopping me from doing it with 10, with 50, and 100? And this was when my mind began to open to possibility. And just for context, this was around April, May of 2020. So this is right when COVID was happening. And this also happened to be the exact time when I was graduating from college. But because of COVID, we didn't have like a graduation ceremony. We all got sent home and we basically graduated over Zoom. So this was a really big pivotal moment in my life because I was basically in this weird transitionary period where as you graduate school, as you finish school, you get pushed out into the real world to figure out what it is you want to do. But because of COVID, the real world didn't really exist. Everything was super locked down at the time. No one could really leave their house. So it was basically like I was forced to just figure out how to get to the next level just from my computer, which I'm very blessed for, honestly, for all the damage that COVID caused. It was a very fortuitous time period in my life because it really helped me focus on just getting to the second stage of building real wealth. So I had that very first dental consulting client probably in like March of 2020. I spent the next 2 months until like April or May of 2020 basically just recording a ton of training material, basically packaging together all of the knowledge, all of the insights, all of the learning lessons that I had about Facebook ads, about how to run Instagram ads for different small businesses, just trying to put it together into a cohesive package. The mindset that I had was if someone was paying me for a 1 hour coaching call or a 1 hour consulting call, what would be the most valuable things that I would run through them? And those were basically all the videos that I tried to create and package together. Were basically all of the learning lessons, all of the most frequently asked questions that someone would ask me on a Zoom or a coaching call of some sort. And by the end of it, I'll show you a picture right here on the screen. It was not by any means a beautiful work of art, but I basically had a decent sized Google folder of all of these different video recordings that basically had all of the knowledge, all of the expertise that I had of running Facebook and Instagram ads for a little over a year and a half, close to 2 years. The mindset that I had with this was not immediately, okay, I'm gonna throw out everything that I'm doing. I'm gonna get rid of every single client, every single project that I'm working on, and I'm only going to sell this course. Instead, I kind of thought of it as a secondary income stream. I thought to myself, if there were any other clients that then came to me and said, hey, Lucas, is there any way you could teach me or teach my team how you're doing this? Now I had something tangible that I could actually offer to them. And what ended up happening was that course on Google Drive basically just sat there, didn't do anything with it for close to a month. And it wasn't until one of my clients ended up firing me, and it was one of my bigger clients, and I actually lost a decent chunk of my income and a decent chunk of my revenue, that I actually have the thought of actually taking that program seriously, of actually now taking it seriously and trying to sell my knowledge rather than just trying to sell my time. And so what I did was I started learning about different ways of advertising, coaching, consulting, and training courses. And I actually found this platform that you're watching this right now on, which is YouTube. YouTube seems like a very logical platform to begin advertising on, because obviously if there's people consuming information about Facebook ads, about Instagram ads, about digital marketing, they're probably going to be pretty likely in wanting to learn at a higher level, potentially investing into a paid education course that's going to teach them more than they could learn just in a free YouTube video. So again, this was around like June, July 2020. I was literally living with my parents at the time. And what I did was, because I was just trying to get something started, I just wanted to test it out. I literally took my iPhone, I went into my parents' backyard and just started walking around and recording these video ads, basically talking about my course, talking about how I could help small businesses and how if they were interested, they could click on the link around the ad and potentially learn more. And then I set up this sales funnel. I basically set up this marketing campaign that would walk people through all the details of the course, and if they wanted to buy it, they could buy it. And I was pricing the course at $1,500, which at the time was around the same price that I was charging to work with a client one-on-one. It was usually between like $1,000, $3,000 if I was actually going to trade my time working for a client. So I thought it was a pretty fair price if they were going to be investing into my knowledge rather than investing into my time. And even with those very crappy ads, again, I could make an entire other video just talking about that advertising process, talking about that process of getting that very first product launched. And that very first month, I made close to $15,000, which was very close to the amount that I was making selling my time. But again, this was a product that I recorded and created once. Once I sold the product, I no longer had to, the amount of effort, the amount of time involvement that was going into them was so much less than if I was working with a client one-on-one and basically doing everything for them. So in my head, this was a massive light bulb moment. I said, obviously it's a lot better if I only work 10 hours a week and make $15,000 than if I'm working 40, 50 hours a week and making the same amount of money. So this gave me a lot of confidence to go all in on this business model. And I began to spend more and more and more, basically reinvesting every single penny, every single dollar of profit back into more ads. So that very first month, which was around June of 2020, I made close to $15,000. The second month, nearly 10x that, and made over $150,000, which at the time I was literally graduating. I was literally in the process of finding my very first apartment. Pardon my French, it was absolutely fucking mind blowing. I literally remember calling my older brother one day, who also does, a decent amount of stuff with like business, side hustles, entrepreneurship. I remember calling him, basically like freaking out. I just called him and I was like showing him all of the numbers about the things that I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. What do I do? And he gave me the very good, the very logical advice, because again, going back to that first step, because I was in it, I was very emotional. I was like, oh my God, this is too much. I can't be going this fast. I need to stop things. I need to at least put a pause on things. Because he was a third-party observer, he was able to give me the logical perspective, which is you are making more money than most doctors and lawyers make. It does not matter how much pressure, how much stress you feel right now. You need to go all in. You need to make the most of it because you don't know how long it's going to last. So you need to double the fuck down on this and just try and make the most of it while you still can. And that was a really impactful call because that year, the remainder of 2020, even while COVID and all the craziness of the time was happening, I made just over $1 million in take-home income as a 21-year-old, when again, literally just the 2 previous years, I was starting out as a broke college student, just trying all of these weird, random online businesses to try to pay my credit card bills and try and pay my student loan debt. And since then, obviously there's been a lot of different ups, downs, kind of learning lessons, pitfalls. Now that same business called Growth Cave does close to $50 million a year in annual revenue with a team of nearly 100 employees. It all started with these first 2 stages, which was first building a skill set, trading my time for money to build out a foundation. Once I had that foundation built out, was then transitioning from selling that skill set, selling my time, to then getting paid for the knowledge that I had in a more productized or a more leveraged way. So that is the second stage that honestly, we're still in the midst of it. And honestly, I think there's more growth that we can take with the business, with the stage that we're at right now. But this is a very important learning lesson because we work with a lot of business owners and a lot of individuals now teaching them how to transition from that first stage to that second stage. People that already have a skill set that they're getting paid a decent amount for. We work with a lot of six-figure earners who are working like 70, 80 hours a week. And they're like, I never spend any time with my family. I don't have any time to enjoy the fruits of my labor. How do I get to that second stage where I'm potentially making the same or even a little less money, but at least I get my life back. At least I get my freedom, my control, and my autonomy. And honestly, as cheesy as it sounds, the number one piece of advice that I give to our clients that are in that transitionary process, the number one reason that many people get stuck in that stage one and never make the jump to stage two, they can continue earning a good income, but they're never able to get their life back. 99% of it comes down to your mental programming. 99% of the clients that I speak to that aren't able to make that transition have been programmed, usually by their parents or an old boss or an old employer, to make them think that it is literally impossible for them to earn money unless they're always stressed out. There's something in their brain. It's like they have a rule inside of their brain that's like etched into a chalkboard that says if you are not always stressed out, if you're not always running around and you have zero free time, then you're not worthy of earning money. And that's the reason why you see a lot of people that are in these professions, they're literally always on their phone, they're always checking email, they're always on these phone calls, and they just seem generally very stressed out. Whereas if you meet a lot of actual millionaires, decamillionaires, and billionaires, a lot of these people, when you talk to them, they are not very stressful. They usually move a little slower, a little calmer. They take their time with a lot of things. And oftentimes they don't follow a real schedule. They just go about their days and they go about their weeks however they want to. And that's ultimately the place that I wanted to get to. And I'm guessing is the place that you want to get to as well. I'm guessing you don't aspire to be someone that's always stressed out, always running around with a deadline to meet. And a big part of that starts with belief, and it starts with your programming, which I actually have another video, the last video that I recorded on my channel, titled Why Most People Never Change, that I think goes into this concept in great detail, but I won't go any further into it here just because this video is long enough as it is. But the number one piece of advice that I can give if you're trying to make that transition to the first stage to the second stage is changing the people that you look up to. A lot of people that are in that first stage look up to people that are constantly stressed out, that are constantly running around, and they believe that these people are successful on paper. In American society, it has become very common to tie busyness with success. But honestly, I believe that's a very middle-class way of thinking because, again, if you meet actually wealthy people, actually very successful people, these people are usually not that busy. They usually don't have a ton of meetings, a ton of deadlines. They usually have a lot of free time that they're actually going to be able to do the things that they want to do. So that is the second stage that I am currently in, that we're currently working through. And honestly, I anticipate that I'm going to be in this stage for at least the next 2 to 3 years. The third stage, which is the one that we are in the beginnings of, and is actually the reason that I'm recording this video right now, is instead of in stage 2, selling your knowledge, selling what you know, the third stage is selling your personality or selling who you are. Perfect example of this is Kylie Jenner, who became the world's youngest self-made billionaire. Whatever you might think about her, she is someone that took her brand, her own personal brand, her personality, her Instagram account basically, and turn that into a multi-million dollar and eventually a $1 billion brand just with her influence, just with her personality. And that is ultimately the stage that I believe the world is moving into. The new currency, the new most valuable asset in the era that we live in is becoming attention. Because more and more people are spending time on different social media apps like TikTok, like YouTube, like Instagram, and the people that can control these platforms, the people that can command the most attention or command the most eyeballs on these platforms, they're the people that are going to be worth the most money. Mr. Beast is another big example. There's been countless articles written in Forbes and Yahoo Finance that predict he's going to be the next world's youngest billionaire because pretty much everyone in almost every country knows who he is because he's the most viewed YouTuber on the planet. So that's ultimately the third stage that myself and the other members of my company are kind of laying the ground stages of, is we are beginning to build our own personal brands. Because honestly, for the past 3 years, I've been a very private person. I am not someone that naturally likes to vlog or showcase every aspect of my life on Instagram stories and social media, but I realize that's obviously part of the growing process. And I also realize I've gotten countless number of emails in the past few years of people wanting to see a little more behind the scenes and a little more of the mindset and a little more of the thought process that goes into our business and our success. So that's ultimately the stage that we're in, and it's ultimately the place, it's ultimately the reason that I'm recording this video today. I honestly can't give too many learning lessons or pieces of advice or insights on this stage because at the time of recording this, we're still in the very early stages of it. But the goal with this YouTube channel, the goal with my social media, the goal with my Instagram is to show the real behind the scenes, to show the real authentic thought process that goes into building potentially a $1 billion brand. But ultimately, that's our goal. That's where we think we have the potential to grow to. And hopefully you can be along for the journey. And if you have any advice, if you have any insights, if you are someone that has had massive success in becoming a personality or selling who you are, then definitely feel free to reach out. I would love to hear your advice and your insights. But that is ultimately my goal. I don't want this to be the sort of thing where these videos are like these super flashy, super polished hype montages. It's the reason why I'm literally just recording this on my phone, in my car, and in our Airbnb backyard, is just because this is the sort of content that I wished I had when I was getting started. So hopefully it can be valuable to you, and hopefully you can get some things that are going to make your journey that maybe is going to be, will be similar to mine, that much easier. That being said, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Let me know in the comments any other videos you'd like to see. Take care for now.